One way to solve a quadratic equation is by factoring. To do this, you'll use the zero property, which just states that if you have two numbers, a and b, if they multiply to zero, then one or possibly both of them are equal to zero. For our first three examples, they are already factored for us. You'll set each factor equal to zero. And then solve. So subtract 2 from this one, and z equals -2. Add 8 to this one, and z equals 8. You can probably look at these and just determine what makes it 0. So z plus 2 is 0, so z would have to be a -2. And z minus 8 equals 0, so if z is 8, that becomes 0. So you may be able to skip setting that up if you want to just look at those and determine what makes it 0. On the second one, my first factor is g. And my second factor is g plus 3. And so if you have a letter on the outside, 0 is one of your solutions. And then on this one, you'll have to subtract 3. So g equals -3. For the next one, I have 4b on the outside. So I have a letter on the outside, so 0 is going to be a solution. But if you're a little unsure of that, go ahead and set it up. So 4b equals 0. Divide both sides by 4, and b equals 0. That's one of them. And the second one is b minus 1 equals 0. Add 1 to both sides, and b equals 1. So if I plug in 0, that's going to be 0 times 0 minus 1 is -1. 0 times -1 is 0. And if I were to plug in 1, that would be 4b, which is 4. But that's going to be times 1 minus 1, which is 0, and 4 times 0 is 0. They're not always factored for you. So if they're not, and you can factor it, that's one way to solve these. So for example 4, notice they have a 2x in common. And then I have x, and then divide this by 2x, and you're left with -6. So my two factors are 2x equals 0. And the second one is x minus 6 equals 0. So on this one, you'll have 0 is one solution. Add 6 to both sides, and 6 is another solution. For the next one, I don't have the greatest common factor on this one, but I do have a product sum. So it would need to multiply to -3 and add to -2. My numbers are -3 and +1 that do that. So this will factor into x minus 3 times x plus 1 equals 0. And you'll set each of those factors equal to 0. Add 3 to both sides, so one solution is x equals 3. On the second one, subtract 1 from both sides, and x equals -1 is your other solution. On number 6, they don't have the greatest common factor. This is a difference of 2 squares if you happen to recognize that. If you don't, it would multiply to -16. There's no middle term, so it adds to 0. The numbers that do that are -4 and +4. So this will factor into x minus 4, x plus 4, and that's equal to 0. If you recognize this as a difference of 2 squares, you can just take square root of that, one's minus and one's plus. My two solutions then, I have to set my factors equal to 0. Add 4 to this, so x equals 4 is a solution. Subtract 4 from that. and x equals -4 is the solution. On number 7, I'm going to add 25 to both sides. You need to set it equal to 0. And then I need to factor that once it's set equal to 0. There is not a greatest common factor, but the leading coefficient is 1, and there are numbers that multiply to 25 and add to -10. So my numbers are -5 and -5 in this case. So this will factor into x minus 5, x minus 5, and that's equal to 0. Now set each factor, which are the same in this case. This is a perfect square trinomial if you'd recognize that in the form square, double square. And so your solutions are 5 and 5. It's the same value. It would be called a double root, but you could just list it once if you wanted to. On the next one, you have to set it equal to 0, so subtract 56 from both sides. Since it's set equal to 0, I notice they do have a greatest common factor. If you have a greatest common factor that's a number, you can divide both sides by that number. So I'm going to divide everything by 7. So that'll be x squared minus 2x minus 8, and that's equal to 0. If you have a letter, you can't divide the letter out. If I had divided the letter out on number 4, I would have lost a solution. So you can divide out numbers on both sides, but don't divide the letters. Go ahead and factor this now. It's going to multiply to -8 and add to -2. So my numbers are -4 and 2 that do that. So let's factor it. So it's x minus 4, x plus 2. X minus 4 equals 0 is one of my factors. And the other one, I'm going to set x plus 2 equal to 0 for my other. Add 4 to both sides. So one solution is x equals 4, subtract 2 from both sides. X equals -2 is my other. And that completes our notes.